I've used this every day for 16 weeks. So if you're wondering if it's actually worth the money, here's who I think it's worth it for, what actually changed, and the one mistake that I made using it, so you don't have to. And here's the proof. The biggest change for me was the density and noticing less shedding with some extra thickness overall, especially around the crown, which was actually the most resistant area to change. So that was really unexpected. This is the mid-scalp image alone. And then this is the side-by-side with the one at 16 weeks after doing the treatment. Based on the 16 weeks and over, which I calculated, 1,120 minutes of red LED use. I can't believe that actually. There's no teasing or gimmicks here. I do actually think this is worth it for the right person. And by the end of this video, I'm confident you will know exactly who that is and who should also save their money. My best advice for getting the most out of it if you do choose to buy it. Okay, the fairness recap. For context, this is for educational use only, and I am a trained beauty therapist and a YouTuber. I'm not a doctor. I have dealt with hair loss since my late teens. I've had a small hairline reconstruction at the front. The rest of my scalp is still native hair and at risk. My oral DHT blocker and minoxidil routine has stayed the same throughout this experiment. I have to be honest that I completed 111 out of the 112 days. So there's transparency. So what changed most? The first thing I really noticed was the less shedding. That was the most obvious change. Then the next came more overall density and strength in the hair, especially around the front and the hairs just behind it. Visually, that did help to add the overall impression and thickness of the hair and the way that it looks, styled and not styled. So for the science to support my findings, the differences that I noticed make total sense for this sort of light therapy. The evidence clinically points towards helping the follicles stay in the growth phase for longer, and that will be helping to improve density and thickness over time, especially for early to moderate androgenetic alopecia. It isn't magic though, but it can be a useful long game treatment if you can incorporate it into your routine. So let's talk about the timeline. I wanted to go way further than previous tests have been done, which I went through in the first video that I made. That will be linked to the end of the video to watch next if you'd like. But I still wanted to share any changes that I noticed throughout the month 1, 2, 3, and now 4. So for the timeline, at around month 1, I could start to see the early signs, but it wasn't enough and it felt too soon to judge properly. So for me, it was really between the month 3 and the month 4, where I could confidently comment on visible changes, and that is why this felt like the more worthwhile point to assess this properly. So what's the reality of daily use? Now, day to day, 10 minutes sounds easy in theory, and honestly, it is realistic, but let's be human about it, and I'm going to be really honest, it is still a thing you have to do every single day, and at first that feels more annoying, it's a change, then it weirdly just becomes part of your evening. I was brushing my teeth with it on, making a drink with it, sitting with it on, being in bed with it on, doing calls with it even on, looking like I escaped a Simpsons Halloween special. Think Mr. Burns glowing in the forest, pretty much that, but red. Next to talk about is the battery life, and I thought this was actually really fair. I got about 8 to 9 treatments out of one USB charge, and once I learnt to top it up midweek, I was fine. I only missed 1 day out of total, and I used it the following morning. Minoxidil. One of the biggest questions that I've seen online. If you can use this with minoxidil, and that goes for everybody because it is suitable in different percentages for whoever wants to use it. And in my case, I always use the helmet first on clean or as clean as possible hair, and then apply the minoxidil after the 10-minute session. This is what works best in my routine. It was a combination treatment, and that is really where the evidence is genuinely stronger for pattern hair loss. So that made sense to me to continue the treatment that I was already doing, and I have done for over 10 years, but to introduce a new modality, which is something like red LED to stimulate those follicles further. And I'll give you the full rundown at the end of this and even more of my thoughts, because this really shocked me, and some good and bad. Talking about the bad, what did I not love? So I cracked a small part of the plastic, trying to flex it over my ears. This was when the earpads were on. And because the case actually has a bit of give, it gave me a full sense of security, and I thought I could just stretch it a little bit. And after doing this a few times, I realized then you can't. It didn't affect the function at all. Though I was gutted, I did want to include this in the review just to learn from my mistake and to reinforce the importance of making sure that the size that you select, there's 2 sizes by the way, I'll put them on the screen right now. And I've linked a worldwide flexible tape measure, which will be in the description. If you haven't got one of those at home, it's a really useful thing to have. I ended up removing the ear pads to make it easier to get on and off, which did help the comfort and the ease of putting it on, but then it did sit a little less securely, which wasn't a deal breaker, but it definitely was a lesson learned and something, again, that I wanted to include in this. Continuing talking about this mask, the Bluetooth, this was something else that I didn't love. And on paper, the Bluetooth sounds really cool, but in practice, for a 10-minute treatment, I could have happily lived without it. The fact that you can't turn it off and it always announces itself when pairing was a bit irritating if you're sensitive to sound, and you can only really turn it down once it is paired with something like your phone or your tablet, and you manually do it that way.
Power on. Pairing connected.
Right. Cleaning was easy. There was a lot of dust on the stand, which is a thing if anyone is watching that sews and you want to make a little cover specifically for these, genuinely, let's talk. So who is this actually for? I believe it's best with people with noticeable thinning or hair loss, because the more exposed the scalp is, the easier it is to notice meaningful change. But I also think it's a great option for people already doing other things who want to stack in a non-invasive treatment only if the budget fits and the nightly routine can support it. I'd also say that check the sizing before you buy. That really matters. More than people would first think, and definitely more than I thought, because it does affect how close the light is sitting to the scalp. So you want to make sure it's as near as possible to your head size. Who should save their money? If you are looking for instant dramatic results, if they know they won't realistically keep up with the daily routine, or if they're going to be bothered about the things like the Bluetooth pairing, or are not wanting things like wireless headphones around their head for concerns like EMF, and especially for those who cannot use red LED or other LED sources safely. Some of those will be linked in the description below. And for all of those candidates, this device isn't for you, and save your money and look at other options. Value and verdict. For the right person, I do think this is worth it. And now, based on my own results, it is something that I would keep using, and I would buy this myself. But I would only do so if I would find something like a discount code to make it more affordable. That makes a big difference when you're looking at tech priced at this level. And if after everything I've shown you, you do think this is right for you, feel free to write a comment first if you need any questions answered. But my code will be down below in the pinned comment. It will also be on the QR code on the screen right now for you to scan. That will daily update worldwide with the most up-to-date and best discount rate that I can get you. Something I'm working constantly behind the scenes, and you will score money off every single time. As a YouTube viewer myself, there's always a bit of cynicism, and I totally get that. That's actually why when I choose to do my reviews, I opt for non-sponsored, and this is why using my code, writing a comment, giving this a like, sharing it with someone that you think would enjoy this means more than you could ever imagine. The cost of doing these is a really big risk because it doesn't always pay off at all. And I know these videos are really useful and things that I wish that I had access to when I had no idea where to even start. Now let's get on with the rest of the video. Now I've answered the door and I can't get away from this, so sorry if that's distracting. She's gonna come in and out. She came in at a really apt time as well. Something that I was thinking about the cost and the investment of this sort of device. I really think it could work well shared between partners or someone close to you. Whatever journey they are with hair loss or hair health would enjoy some of those benefits or that sort of insurance to keep the hair as healthy as possible. But important to remember that only if the fit works properly for both of you, because the distance of the LED to the treatment area does change the amount of energy that is being sent to that area, which does change how effective the result is. I would have no issue letting someone borrow this. Sadly, we can't through the camera for you to try it out, but it's just something that I wanted to share that's a bit kind of not very status quo. So something that I wanted to include, I was going to be using as a short for social media to advertise this longer video. This isn't the formal before and after method from the test, because that had to stay as controlled and comparable as possible using the same product, the same styling methods. This is what I wanted to include to show you how it sits with no help at all. So you can still see, even from this, from styled to freshly washed and kind of fluffy, you can actually see that second one looking thicker than even the first one, to really show you that it's not just because of the way I'm styling it. With no help at all, it still looked thicker and was something that I was really impressed with to notice those differences. And of course, this isn't a miracle transformation, and for everyone that's going to be different, but that's exactly why I trust that I'm seeing it. And it's important to note that 16 weeks is the benchmark clinically that you're going to notice those more apparent and obvious effects. that doesn't mean those results and benefits stop there. They can continue and compound over time. So these changes are subtle, but to me it's meaningful. In total, I had less hair shedding, I had more density, my hair felt stronger, and some overall improvement, especially in the most resistant area. And if you want the full unboxing, the tech specs, what to expect from this technology, and my first thoughts and deep dive into this, the part 1 is worth a watch. And not forgetting to use the code to get at least 10% off every single time you invest in anything from CurrentBody, something I'm really proud of, and it was worth fighting for. I'd like you to leave a comment with what month or check-in that you would want next to see if there are any differences. I look forward to speaking to you in the comments. Feel free to reach out directly to me as well if you don't want it as public. And as always, thank you for watching.